Has the market bottomed today? We're going to find out for you. My name is Paul Bear. Welcome back into Tech Path. Let's get going today. I do want to thank our sponsor, and that is Coinbase. Guys, if you are catching this video right now, there's a couple of things. Act fast because Coinbase is rotating their offers. And this one is the one that where you can get up to $200 to get started. So you could be one of the lucky ones that gets the $200 reward. All you have to do is use our link down below. The future of money is here. We're the most trusted place for people in business to buy and sell and use crypto. So check it out. It's a great place to get started if you're brand new to crypto, which this is a good time to get into crypto, guys. Good time. Let's go over to our first few points here. I want to hit on this news story right here. This is a Bitcoin trader out there doubting the breakout significance as Bitcoin price nears 87K. A couple of points he makes within this are that there is continued strength, and the weekend had set up kind of a pair of at attack levels closer to 90K. It's funny watching sentiment flip. I would agree with that. Let me know in the comments down below. Do you think this is kind of an unusual flip of sentiment? Because right now sentiment has risen quite a bit. If you look at fear and greed, if you look at just in general, sentiment overall has flipped quite a bit. Short-term momentum appears bullish, but we still face multiple resistance hurdles before confirming the correction is complete. I still think, though I agree and respect, traders, and especially guys who look at the logic behind what we're dealing with when you're charting things out. And technical analysis is definitely respected. But my point is right now is I feel like there's just so much more macro pressure in the markets as a whole. One thing to look at from macro pressure is this right here. U.S. consumers are exhausted. Real income growth expectations of U.S. consumers over the next 5 years, record low. Americans in the bottom third income group now see record low, minus 18% chance of higher inflation, just incomes in the next 5 years. You also look at comparison of 5 years ago, this was percentage is twice as large. So this is a big deal. In other words, consumers see inflation outpacing wage growth for a foreseeable future. And this is a problem because if that is going on right now, and you look at what this current administration is doing, the promise was to lower prices. Lower prices, President Trump. He is failing at that with exception of a handful of things. Yes, eggs are a little bit lower, gas is cheaper, but the core of what we're seeing on inflation has not necessarily completely repaced itself. And I think we're in for some time to get that done. Volatility in U.S. Treasuries has also been on a historic level. The 10-year note surged over 50 basis points in 1 week, making it the largest weekly increase since 2001. I want you guys to go back and just do a little history lesson on 2001 and what was going on at that time. We saw one of the biggest retraces off the S&P 500 that the market had ever seen. That came from the dot-bomb era. So is that nearing in? Warren Buffett is sitting on enough cash to buy 476 companies in the S&P 500. That is a ton of liquid, guys, that is ready to be deployed in the market. Now, the question is are they willing to start moving that into a lot of these assets? I want to go to a clip real quick. This is Mark Cuban because he's talking about his portfolio strategy. Take a look.
What is Mark Cuban doing right now with his portfolio?
When Trump was elected, I sold most of my stocks and went to cash. I didn't get hurt, except I own a bunch of Bitcoin, so I got hurt a little bit there. So I went to cash just in anticipation that something like this could happen. And so in terms of what I've done so far, I bought a little bit of Berkshire Hathaway. Warren Buffett went to cash, and if I had a choice between having me invest my cash or Warren Buffett invest my cash, I'll have Warren Buffett invest my cash.
Based on that, you look at this right here, and this is the S&P turns negative as the EU says tariffs will remain with little progress made in tariff talks. Now, here's the thing I want you to focus on, guys, because this is why you're seeing investors like Buffett, Cuban, and others starting to move to cash positions. And that is this volatility right here. Look at that volatility, guys. That's the S&P 500. So if you are in a position where you don't have the stomach to go long-term, long hold, then cash positions are a great way to exit a market and be ready for something else. Now, that's the real question going forward. Has the S&P hit its bottom? I still believe we are in for more volatility because there's no telling what this White House is going to do. And I think it's not anything to laugh at, but the point is you're going to see some volatility continuing to hold in the markets. Here is David Frump from The Atlantic coming in and he says, this past week, China learned this, exactly where Trump's pain points are, how much to squeeze before he flinches, and also how little America's partners and allies want to help. Now, you could look at this and say, well, there's many strategies going on with Trump. I'm not, a whisperer of trying to figure out what they are. What I can tell you is I've been in business for 30 years and I've seen negotiation tactics, some of which I would agree with on Trump, some of which I would not. The randomness of his moves are what make him very unpredictable and at the same time predictable. And I know that's kind of a counterbalance, but I think that that's the issue that the Chinese are playing with President Trump right now is what can they predict that will cause enough pain? We've already seen this in the situation with Apple and the chips. And that is semiconductors, chips, Apple get a reprieve on these tariffs. He flinched. I don't think that was a good flinch. If you're going to stand your ground, you've got to stand your ground. And unfortunately, Trump did not. That's probably going to happen also with what's going to go on with this whole issue with Boeing, because China now has ordered airlines to stop accepting Boeing aircraft and also to halt purchase of American-made aviation parts. Now, I'm assuming that means Airbus is going to do very well in selling their planes to China. I also believe that that's probably going to put a lot more pressure on Boeing. The issue right here, though, is Boeing, I hate to say it, kind of deserves it. They've had very bad mismanagement over the last really the last decade. I don't think you protect Boeing either. These companies are in these positions because of bad decisions by executives that were looking to cut costs and greed. As some would say, greed is good, but not in this particular case. Let's go further into this. China won't talk if the U.S. doesn't show respect, says a former official. This is another issue that I reluctantly agree with China. I agree with anybody, actually. I agree with anybody who has to go to a negotiation table and the person on the other side does not show at least a micron of respect. You may not have to like the person, and in many cases in negotiations like this, people don't like each other, but respect is one of the key things that can get things to go forward, and I think that is all it would take out of President Trump. And personally, I believe that that would actually be a good faith effort on the President of the United States that would not look weak at all. Instead, it would look very, very presidential, and that is to extend a little bit of a truce and show a little respect and invite the Chinese to come in and negotiate a trade imbalance deal that does work for both them and for the United States. That is just politics at a whole. But if you look at the rest of the world, the yen surge and also soaring bond yields could threaten a little bit of what is happening with Bitcoin, especially as the Bank of Japan weighs in on their policy shift. Because if they do see a situation where we get a policy shift, remember, the rallying yen and the highest Japanese yield bonds in 30 years, this is a little bit of a warning sign. Their 30-year bond yield jumped almost 2.3%. And then you also look at the BOJ, our Fed, think of it that way, they may be in a position now where they have to start to pivot. And this, of course, is because of the yen rally. And of course, remember, weaker yen past 160, meanwhile, could force tightening policy, and global markets are watching this very closely. And crypto may be the one of the first to feel the heat. I would agree with that again, because liquidity will start to flow out of that market. And the Asian markets are very pivotal in terms of how risk assets are managed. So all of that kind of pointing to the next thing, and that is Bitcoin, gold, ETFs. Let's take a look.
Bitcoin is down about 10% to start the year. Gold's up 20%. But if you look out over 1 year, they're both up about 35%. So it's pretty interesting that there's been this divergence. But if you go back and you take a look, you can actually see that gold usually leads these rallies. Okay. And nobody really knows why that happens. My kind of guess would be that a lot of the central banks and institutional investors, they're either not approved to buy Bitcoin or they're not used to running to Bitcoin in these moments of kind of geopolitical uncertainty. What we do see, though, is when gold runs about 100 days later or so, Bitcoin not only catches up, it usually runs much harder. And so you get that kind of higher volatility. But if you're buying Bitcoin via the ETFs, you're simply just getting price exposure. You're not actually doing it from a geopolitical strategy standpoint. And so I think there's a lot of countries around the world that are saying to themselves, well, if the United States has a strategic Bitcoin reserve, they're openly talking about the fact that they're going to go buy more, we should have a Bitcoin strategy. Doesn't mean that we have to buy. We could just sit it out. But we need to have a decision here. And buying the ETF allows me to get price exposure, but not actually take on the geopolitical risk.
Okay, I like Pomp, don't get me wrong, but you got to remember, Pomp is a Bitcoin I won't say a maxi, but he's highly invested in Bitcoin. There is a reason that he's always very pro Bitcoin. Not a bad thing. Good investors talk their book. That's okay. Nothing wrong with that. I get people on here all the time. They're talking their book. You just have to know that that is their book. You look at Bitcoin flashing signals and agreeing with what Pomp is saying is that there are some potential opportunities here. And a lot of it is early sell signs, or I should say buy signs right now. But this could push leading digital currency to 170K. This is one of the things they're looking at. It's flashed the ultimate VIX bottom signal. So this gets back to the volatility index. And have we hit the bottom? If we have, then the opportunity is clear. Yes, Bitcoin does respond after a VIX bottom signal is in. And you look further into this, similar move could see Bitcoin reaching at least another 150K during its next major advance. Now, I don't know if you guys believe that or not. If you do, drop some comments down below. Do you think we are now at the bottom and this is the point of maybe no return for Bitcoin back to a recursor? Or do you feel like this is just one of those volatility moves of what and how Bitcoin moves in general? Ethereum also near historic lows. This, of course, many people saying that maybe this goes a little bit worse. I'm not necessarily in that camp that Ethereum could be in that kind of dire position. Now, granted, ETH has definitely not been an asset that has moved over the past year in the way that I think a lot of ETH investors expected it to. But if you look in general at Ethereum, it just hit an all-time high in terms of stablecoin activity. And stablecoins are getting ready to be legal tender across a lot of different banks and businesses in the United States, which I think will cause a mass move into stablecoins. And that only is going to push Ethereum up. That gives me, now, will it push Ethereum to maybe a 3 to 4x, which is some people out there saying? That's the real question mark going forward. Just to give you an example, stablecoin market could grow by 2 trillion by end of 2028. This is Standard Charter saying this, and Standard Charter is the company that also said we could see Bitcoin Ethereum up as high as 4K again very easily. So a lot of moves here, I think, in the market in general. 230 billion right now today, 2 trillion by year end. Think about that right now, guys. Let me zoom in on that. 230 billion today, end of year 2028, $2 trillion. That is unbelievable in terms of growth. And that may be underscoring it. That may actually be lower than what could happen in stablecoins going forward. You also have to look at this right here over the last 100 years is Miles Dosher, which if you don't watch his channel, you should probably check him out. He's got a good YouTube channel. I kind of watch him every once in a while. Shout out to Miles. Over the last 100 years, bull markets have yielded an average cumulative return of 149%. If you look at the bears, they've only given up 31%. So you kind of weigh that out. It's always kind of pays to be on the bull side of the market, because if you miss it, what are you out? You're out. You know, that's a good wager. If you look at the percentage of loss versus the percentage of gain opportunity, and remember, this is exactly that. Markets like this are bets. These are bets. Investing is looking at the long term over a longer period of time. And if you look at the total 3, this right now shows a very interesting trend right now on crypto. We are struggling to get in and out of this for a breakout, but this also could indicate we have a bottom ensuing. Now, does that mean that we get a reversal on Bitcoin? I think that's the question mark right now, because at the current trend right now that we are on Bitcoin, yes, we have a trend going up. Does it get back to that 94K mark, which is the potential of where we could go, or do we see a retracement? Right now, I'm feeling, because of the volatility that we're seeing with Trump's tariffs, and again, this could go positive or negative. If we get real positive news, meaning a deal with China, that would be the key indicator. I think the markets would rip almost on everything, maybe with the exception of a handful of categories within the S&P 500, because that is much more recessionary. All of that still playing forward. And if you look at even Ethereum, let's take a look at ETH real quickly. Not moving as tightly right here, as you can kind of see, just off this bottom right here at around 1386. If you look at the growth on that, what was that? Just a little hair. Yeah, only 20% of where we are trading right now, somewhat going sideways right now on ETH. So again, let me know in the comments down below. What are you buying? Are you getting into altcoins right now? Some of these are depressed. Some of them have recovered. Solana has recovered a significant amount just in the last little bit. Or are you staying safe in a cash position? Are you posturing into gold? Give me your decisions down below. If you're not in the Diamond Circle, get in on that. And if you're not in our Telegram group, you got to join. It's free, and I'm in there every day chatting with you guys. So if you want to send a message, do it on the Telegram group down below. There's a link. Also, follow me on X, @PaulBaron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.